important for us as a country, however, is where we are in the region. It's the fact that we are a part of the global economy, but it's more specifically a fact that we are part of the world's energy equation. And our customers, well, as you can see Andrew Barry sitting up the front here, Andrew's customers, China, Taiwan, and Japan. So when we look at where we're going as a country in the region, it's very positive. Papua New Guinea, Mongolia, Fiji, South Korea, Australia, Indonesia, New Zealand, and Philippines. But again, regionally, a strong economy, strong growth prospects. I guess the challenge for us, obviously, is to try and leverage some of the benefits that we've had with the construction of the PNG LNG project, with the potential approval of of other projects down the line, and transfer that to make our economy a bit more broad-based. In terms of where we've been, as the Prime Minister said, we've had 14 years of consecutive growth. A country like Australia has had 22 years of consecutive growth. Now, for us, I always say that a lot of countries have a linear path towards development. We just had $19 billion worth of LNG dropped on us. The other thing is that it's not the first time we've seen this, it's the second time we've seen this. So in the challenges of having consecutive growth and world's leading growth last year, this year, and moving on to next year, we've also got some challenges. And one of them, as we experience some revenue issues right now, is a culture of largesse, which we need to address. And when you compound that with the issues that we have with implementation, but again, the story for us is strong, and we know what we need to do. The question for us is can we do them, and how effectively can we do them? Commodity prices. Everything's going this way. We try to tell our critics and commentators on our country, we are a price taker, not a price maker. It seems that the fact that oil prices are down, blame the government. It seems that copper prices down, gold prices down, and other agricultural commodity prices are down, blame the government. Australia loses the Ashes, blame the government. Again, as a country, what we need to do is to have faith in the fundamentals of the economy. And as the Prime Minister said earlier, our inflation remains stable and sliding to the left. Our interest rates are stable and is conducive to an investment community. So again, give us a break. But let me remind everybody where our budget priorities are. And certainly, what I'm in charge of is the fiscal policy. But the O'Neill Dion government is about enhancing opportunities for our people, whilst recognizing the need for macroeconomic stability. I think the first time when we came in, we were pursuing economic growth aggressively. But now we recognize that while it's a necessary condition for getting prosperity and making lives better for your people, it's not sufficient. So the challenge, obviously, is to translate the benefits in the mineral sector, in the pursuit of that growth, to making lives better for Papua New Guineans. We're improving service delivery and improved implementation processes. Implementation continues to be a large problem. So even though the government's budgets have been growing, it's fair to say that we're not able to effectively complete the implementation of all of the roads, schools, bridges, hospitals, initiatives in churches, women's, and the youth that we would like to. So I think part of our problem is to look internally, and we've got a large program on public sector reform that we are aggressively pursuing. And of course, many of you would be happy to hear about the National Procurement Authority as well. This government is decentralizing the spend of the economy. Not only are we allowing the provinces, the districts, and the local level governments, the people out there, to choose their priorities, but we're funding them so that they can start to implement. Now, there's going to be a little bit of pain before they get the gain, but it's absolutely necessary, again, to throw out the decentralization of the spend. And another thing is, it allows for economic activity and commerce outside of those areas of aggregation, outside of Port Moresby, outside of Lae, outside of Mount Hagen, and Madang and Kokopo Rabaul, for example. In increasing the direct funding out to these areas, I think this government has spent more money, over 2 billion kina, out in these areas. So again, for the investment community, we're hoping that not only are you looking at some of the opportunities in the urban areas, but out there in the rural areas as well, and particularly in the services. I can imagine that with all this money going out into the provinces, districts, and local level governments, that compliance will be an issue. So accountants and lawyers, dare I say, please make your way out there. As we said, in trying to address some of the expenditure issues that we've got to be careful about adversely impacting the growth momentum. We believe there is growth momentum, that there is opportunity. But if I just take a red pen or a scalpel and say 30% of the budget goes or 40% of the budget goes, you may start to take away from the investment of the private sector. So it's taken us a while to get here, but we're at that stage now where we're a bit more comfortable as to where we should be cutting and where we shouldn't be cutting, but actually investing a little bit more. But in doing so, we make sure that we don't touch the foundations of our economy to make lives better for Papua New Guineans. Those are the areas of health, of key infrastructure, of education, law and order, agriculture, and the small to medium enterprise sector where the most of our people are. And of course, all of this works because we've got a safe and just community, and therefore we're strengthening the justice sector, we're resourcing the correction services and modernizing our police and the defense force. I think everyone understands the fact that you have two things to control here: how much money you make and how much money you spend. So on the expenditure side, what we've done is we haven't gone with a supplementary budget or an expenditure reductions bill earlier than now, because it's taken us a while to get here. But we are controlling through the issuance of warrants. Now, the issue for us, obviously, is that we haven't made public, what the criteria for that, for the control of the warrants are, or how much money the departments and agencies are getting. But what we've done on a rolling basis is to talk to everybody and say, this is what you're going to expect over the next quarter or so start managing how you do it. I think some of the unfair criticism that the government also gets is that they think that by changing the Prime Minister, changing his government, changing me, by changing the driver of the car, you get a different car. You don't. The car is still the same. 14 years of growth has led to 14 years of a culture of largesse. This government has seen over the last 5 years a jump in its budget by 5 billion kina. That's a lot. There are departments out there that physically don't understand how to cut. So we've had to go through an exercise, and we've identified at this stage between 1 to 1.6 billion kinas worth of cuts that we need to do to bring our numbers back to where we said we would be. And there may be another 1 billion kina that we need to go. So we are controlling the issuance of warrants, and as the Prime Minister said, there is an appropriations reductions bill that is to come out in October. What we might do a little bit earlier than that for the benefit of the investment community in the private sector is to publish what that's going to look like, so you can get a sense of where government's head is at, and if it requires a rebalancing of your own priorities and your own investment plans, then you can do that. But as I said, we're not touching our priority areas. We keep trying to tell the departments as well, we don't need to build everything in 2015. Let's look at pushing those that we don't need to, or that haven't started, or that are not essential, into 2016 and into 2017. And I think that's been the issue. I keep trying to explain to everyone that when we announce a 16 billion kina budget, it doesn't mean that we've got 16 billion kina sitting in the bank. We've got some of it, but on a quarterly basis, we then go out there and do our market operations, and we attract that kind of money. Now, if we can't make that kind of money, obviously, you can't go out and build 16 billion kinas worth of an economy. But as I saw my colleague Secretary Dairi Vele last morning, later on, I think the numbers from him are something like 23% of our traffic is on 72% of our roads. So in terms of where the Prime Minister and the Minister are, there are a lot of nice to haves but not necessaries. So for us, we'll be looking at those nice to haves and seeing where we can pull back there. And as I said, the team is working very hard on this expenditure cut exercise. For the first time, I think government's also looking at revenue, and there's a committee, the enhanced revenue committee, made up of the Department of Finance, Treasury, Planning, IRC, Customs, and the Bank of Papua New Guinea that meet on a weekly basis to look at where things are. Obviously, we need to. Collections is always going to be an issue, and I do agree with the chairman of the tax committee, who came out earlier and said that there are some things that we can do to increase collections, but there's only so much blood you can pull from that stone, and we are aware of the fact that those that do pay their taxes, or those that are compliant, are overburdened because there are those that aren't compliant. So that's an area we need to look at. But I think what we're interested in is looking at some of those structural issues that we can get to, so that we can so that we identify newer areas in which we can get more revenue. But as the Prime Minister quite rightly pointed out as well, there's some opportunity for us to give back to the community. There's been 14 years of growth, an explosion, a positive explosion in the last 5 years. There is an opportunity for us to give back to our community. One thing that we're always critical on is tax concessions, obviously, and I think in our negotiations with ExxonMobil as the lead sponsor of the PNG LNG, I think we limited the amount of concessions that we gave away, and we even put in there non-discrimination clauses so that other projects that come along will either get as good as Exxon got or worse, which is positive for us. In terms of financing the budget, as I said, when I say we've got 16 billion kina, doesn't mean it's sitting in the bank. We have to go out there and try and access it. In terms of some of the parachutes that are available for us towards this year, obviously, the governor of the bank, Lloyd Bacani, and myself are going through an exercise on identifying ways that we can diversify the market and deepen the market. And I think there's an opportunity for a secondary market in terms of our financing, and of course trying to get either external money in into our domestic sources of financing and intermediaries. We announced the sovereign bond for this year's budget, and it's taken us again towards the back end of this year. But that process is well underway, and we've identified the investment banks that'll be representing us. As always, and the law firms. There's also we agreed to sell a portion of our equity to our landowners for $1 billion, and that's due next year. So there's a little bit of work done by my colleague Wapu from the NPCP to realize that. So in effect, again, there's the opportunity to monetize $1 billion for this year, and of course, there's a lot of trust accounts that we need to manage as well. What are our challenges remain the same. We need economic stability. We need to maintain our fiscal discipline. We're reprioritizing our commitments, and as the Prime Minister said, managing the increase in our debt stock. Again, when I look at it, for a country that's as grown as fast as we have and that have as many opportunities as we have, a 35% debt to GDP ratio is quite low. So that's PNG economy in 20 minutes. We understand the global events, and we have to make sure that we, as much as possible, address them in our way, in those areas that are specific to us. We're not sitting on our hands. We are looking at the expenditure issues, our expenditure issues, in particular our implementation, where we can cut back those nice-to-haves, and of course we're looking at ways to make more money. And of course, the second last point that's probably most relevant for everyone in the room, that we are trying to build a private sector conducive environment, which I think we are doing. Thank you very much and good morning.